After the outbreak of World War I, the Ottoman Turkish Empire, which ruled Palestine, joined the German-Austrian alliance and fought against Britain, France, Russia, and the other Allied powers. For the leaders of the Zionist movement, the war was seen as a major opportunity to advance their goal of establishing a Jewish state. They believed that if they could build good relations with the side most likely to win the war, they would be able to gain its support afterward and promote the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. However, because the outcome of the war was unpredictable at the time, the Zionist movement itself split into two camps: the pro-German faction and the pro-British faction. The pro-German faction, hoping for a victory by the Central Powers led by Franz Oppenheimer, the pro-German faction held that Germany was fighting a holy war of self-defense. The German-Austrian alliance would ultimately defeat the reactionary and oppressive Tsarist regime of Russia, since Russian Jews had long suffered persecution. Cooperating with Germany would not only help liberate Russian Jews, but might also persuade Germany and its ally, the Ottoman Empire, to support Jewish immigration to Palestine. Soon after the war began, the German Zionist organization openly expressed its support for the Central Powers and even called upon Jewish youth to join the army. However, Germany disappointed Oppenheimer and his supporters in two key respects. Germany never issued an official statement supporting the Zionist movement, nor did it make any real effort to improve the situation of persecuted Jews in Russia and Eastern Europe. As a result, the pro-German camp gradually fell into a passive position. 2. The pro-British faction, Weizmann's judgment and rise. The pro-British faction was led by Chaim Weizmann. They believed Britain and the Allied powers would ultimately win the war. After the war, Palestine was likely to fall under British influence. Therefore, Zionist efforts should rely on Britain. At first, the pro-British faction was a minority. Among the 6 members of the Executive Committee of the World Zionist Organization, 3 were Russian, 2 were German, and 1 was Austrian. Most leaned toward Germany. Many Russian Jews also feared that alienating Britain would worsen the circumstances of Jews in Palestine. But as pro-German diplomacy repeatedly failed and the battlefield gradually turned in favor of the Allies, the pro-British faction gained influence rapidly. 3. Weizmann's background and diplomatic talent. Weizmann was born in Russia and grew up in Poland. As a young man, he studied in Germany and later taught at the University of Geneva in Switzerland. In 1904, he moved to Britain, lectured on biochemistry at the University of Manchester, and became a British citizen in 1910. Deeply influenced by Theodor Herzl's The Jewish State, he became a committed Zionist. After settling in Britain, he emerged as a central leader of the Zionist movement there. Weizmann possessed exceptional diplomatic skills. He built wide connections among British political elites, including Home Secretary Herbert Samuel, Minister of Munitions David Lloyd George, and later Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour. He argued that in order to win British support, Zionist goals must align with Britain's strategic interests in the Middle East. In October 1914, Weizmann wrote in a letter, "Palestine is the natural extension of Egypt, a buffer between the Suez Canal and any potential hostile forces from the north. With slight improvements in conditions, it would be possible to bring 1 million Jews into Palestine within 50 to 60 years, giving Britain a strong defensive line, while giving us a country of our own." 4. From diplomatic efforts to a historic turning point. The birth of the Balfour Declaration. During World War I, Weizmann was invited by Lloyd George to conduct research for the British Admiralty on new explosive materials. He successfully developed a new method of synthesizing acetone, solving a critical problem in the production of smokeless powder. This achievement greatly enhanced his standing within the British government and strengthened the case for supporting Zionism. February 1917. The British cabinet held an important meeting with Zionist leaders and members of the Rothschild family. The preliminary decision was that Britain would protect Palestine after the war and cooperate with the Zionist movement. Over the following months, Weizmann and other leaders conducted extensive negotiations, meeting frequently with British officials, drafting and revising proposals, and urging Britain to formally support the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. November 2, 1917. After consulting U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, the British government issued the historic Balfour Declaration in the form of a letter from Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild. It stated that Britain favored the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. It would use its best efforts to facilitate this. Nothing should prejudice the civil and religious rights of the non-Jewish communities in Palestine. Though only 3 sentences and 125 words long, the declaration profoundly shaped Middle Eastern history. Weizmann later remarked, "The Balfour Declaration was the result of 2,000 visits." Britain's strategic motivations. Britain issued this declaration for both long-term strategic reasons and urgent wartime needs. 1. Long-term strategy. With the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Britain sought to place strategically crucial Palestine under its influence. Supporting a Jewish national home provided a convenient justification for long-term British presence in the region. Since Zionist goals aligned with elements of Britain's Middle Eastern interests, Britain welcomed the cooperation. 2. Immediate political and military needs. By 1917, the war had exhausted both sides, and domestic crises were escalating. Britain hoped to rally Jewish opinion in Russia to prevent Russia from withdrawing from the Allied camp. It also sought to influence Jewish communities in the United States and strengthen American support for Britain. Germany was also attempting to court Jewish opinion. If Britain did not act first, Jewish support might shift toward Germany. In addition, key British leaders such as Balfour, Lloyd George, and Samuel were personally sympathetic to Zionism. Combined with Weizmann's persistent efforts, these factors led to the issuance of the declaration. 6. Historical significance and consequences. The Balfour Declaration marked the first time since the 1897 Basel Congress that a major world power formally supported the Zionist movement, greatly encouraging Jews around the world. As Israeli Foreign Minister Abba Eban later noted, the real turning point for the Jewish national cause came in 1917, not 1948. However, the declaration also had far-reaching negative consequences. At the time, Palestine had about 700,000 Arab inhabitants owning around 97% of the land. Britain did not consult the Arab population when drafting the declaration, nor did it seriously consider their interests. Its vague reference to non-Jewish communities ignored Palestinian Arabs as a distinct national group, planting the seeds of long-term conflict. Thus, the Balfour Declaration was both a major triumph for the Zionist movement and a historic moment in which the rights of Palestinian Arabs were overlooked.